Well, the other campaign in 2006 was based on the sixth declaration of the Lacandona jungle, and this is a very important movement to understand the Zapatistas. This is a very important document to understand the Zapatistas. Why? Because in this declaration, the sixth declaration, they remember all the people that the Zapatistas are working not only with the Indian communities, but also they said in this document to the oppressed and exploited people in the nation. So what the document pointed out is class struggle in the national level, and the aspiration of the Zapatistas to pursue their primary objective of the armed organization that is called national liberation. So this is something that we have to remember, because sometimes the Zapatistas could be considered or classified as only an ethnic movement, and that is not the truth. They always had been insistent in the two factors that inspire their struggle. One is the rights and the dreams of the Indian communities and peoples, and the other is the rights and dreams of the workers, as workers of the oppressed and the exploited people of all over Mexico and in the planetary space. So when they went to this first election, they erupted as in the national debate, but on those years, seems to me that the timing was not so right. The timing of this other campaign was not so rhythmic. Why? Because the campaign was crossed by a fraud and a state trick. There was a stake election, and they stole to the candidate of the PRD, López Obrador, the president. The difference between the two candidates, Calderón in one side and López Obrador in the other, was 0.18% of the votes. So all the institutional left accused the Zapatistas of dividing the left and that they were supported the system. All these accusations was false at all, completely false. Why? Because they do not divide the left, because the left never has been united. In Mexico, there are all kinds of expression in the left-wing spectrum of policies. So the Zapatistas do not divide left. Not before, not now. And the Zapatistas learn what happened in 2006. So at this time, they think about this initiative of erupting again in the electoral processes, and the initiative was discussed during 3 years in the Zapatistas communities, and nobody knows that they were discussing this. That is the clandestine part of their lives. Nobody knows. And suddenly, when the Zapatistas met the National Indian Congress in 2015, I'm sorry, they told them, we meet every day, and we meet every year. So, and we complain and criticize the government, but we do not have positive actions. So at this time, we propose you, the National Indian Congress, an active action. And that proposition was to integrate a council of government, an Indian council of government. That was something new. That was not in 2006. This council has to be integrated in 93 regions, or what the anthropologists call ethno-regions of Mexico, and has to be integrated by one man and by one woman of the community. These representatives have to be elected in the horizontal democratic and representative forms of the communities. That is general assemblies. No votes, general assemblies. So the discussion was very heavy, very intense, because for many Indian representatives in the National Congress, Indian National Congress, to go into the electoral game was to have parties, to be in the scheme of democratic bourgeois electoral game. So the discussion took place several days, and finally the majority of the Indians representatives there accepted the proposal. So the proposal integrate a woman as a spokeswoman, and that was named Marichuy, María de Jesús Patricio Martínez is his name, but we call her Marichuy. So Marichuy has a long history of participation in the Congress, in the National Congress. And he even spoke in the Congress, deputies, and during the Esther talk in the Congress. He was the speaker for the National Congress, Marichuy. He is an Indian from Jalisco, from Enagua community, and she and his and her family has a very a knowledge of left traditions. Why? Because her husband is the son of a very well-known, already died left leader. So Carlos González, her husband, and Mary Choi participate in not only in the Indian movement but also in the left-wing movements. So this is something very important because they know the culture of to being a left militant in Mexico today. Okay, the proposal was published and by the journals and the newspapers and everything, and the reaction of the political elite, included López Obrador and Morena, that is his party, was terrible. A very emotional and irrational criticism, again with the idea that that proposal has to do with my candidature, and you are again breaking the left and fragmented the vote and all these things. And also the reaction of the other part of the elite was very racist. How come the Indians want to govern Mexico? And also, how come a woman can govern Mexico? So was a sexist and racist criticism against the proposal. So the proposal includes the idea that we have to follow the rules of the electoral game. So we integrate, we call Asociación Civil, a civil association, that take the name is the time of the flowers of the people, in which the flowers brought. Es la hora del florecimiento de los pueblos. That was a very long name for an organization, but that was the name of our organization. I was part of that organization. So we do all the legal procedures, and we went to the campaign. The campaign included the use of a telephone. So it was completely against the Indian communities, because the use of telephone, especially good telephones, costs about $500. So it was against the poor people that do not can buy a telephone of $500, and it went to the Indian communities that don't use telephones. Many of them, they don't have access to telephones, not even to internet. So the rules of the game were classes and races. But anyway, we went to that. And what happened? Well, thousands of young people integrate into the campaign in all cities of Mexico, in all regions of Mexico, to obtain the citizen support with a signature in the form, like this. And So we took the streets, the open public spaces, universities, markets, all kind of situation in which bus stations. We were everywhere to ask the signatures of citizens. And we were very hard. We worked very hard, very, very hard. But we do not obtain the quantity that was required. That was about 1 million of signatures. We obtained more or less 300,000 signatures. But we were the only of the independent candidatures that we didn't cheat. Our signatures were true citizens, true people, real people, not false credentials, no. Contrary to the others, so-called independent candidates. So for us, it was a formal defeat, but a victory in the legal and political, in the moral and political terms of the campaign. And the campaign is running, and the election is going to take place first day of July. Let me tell you that the situation of Mexico is one of the worst situation in national history. The worst situation in the national history. We have 200,000 executions. We have about 40,000 disappearances. We have a rate of kidnapping, one of the worst, the higher in the world. We have the killing of journalists. I already informed about this during the seminar, but it's important to remember that Mexico is not Switzerland, or not, it's a country in which we have a history of state electoral fraud, always. I don't remember a free election without fraud. I don't remember. Always the fraud is present. And even we are an artist in this fraud. We have what we call a pregnant ballot places, because it's when the first citizen is going to put the first vote, is already pregnant. It's already with 100 votes, and we have what we call the crazy rat. That is that you wanted to vote and you are not in the list, so you have to go to other place, and no. And also a lot of that person vote. There are duplication of the credential to vote. A person could have 10 credentials with different names. So I think that this election is going to happen the same or worse. And the president, Enrique Peña Nieto, he passed a law that is called Law for the Internal Security in last December. That law gives the president the right to put the armed forces in the streets when he thinks that national security is in risk. So we have that the armed forces are prepared to act at the president's orders. We have this historical fraud, and we have about more than 100 of candidates killed during this campaign. We have about 200 candidates that were forced to abandon the race. So the diagnostic the Zapatistas and I myself as a political analyst are doing is that we are going to a troubled election, to a violent election in 1st of July. So that's why during all this campaign with Marichui, while we were obtaining signatures, Marichui and the rest of their companions were in a journal for all the national territory, organizing the Indian communities and the people's communities. That was their task. So in one side, the citizen task, and in the other, the people's task. We carry the task of the citizen side, and Marichui and all the companions of the Council, National Council of Government, the task of organizing Indian communities. So the Zapatistas have to do a lot in this proposal. As a matter of fact, they saw this proposal. It's a Zapatista proposal. Well, regarding the internal organization of the Zapatistas, it's very important to take into consideration that Zapatistas have the main principle, and that's it: to obey the command of the people. And that is a completely different version of democratic representation, bourgeois democracy. And they have principles to govern, to be a government. And that is 7 principles. I am not going to say the principles that is, but you must go down, not go up. You must create, not destroy. You must convince, not impose. So all those principles are the principles of obey the command of the people. So these principles are followed by the different circles of the government: the local, the municipality, and the regional. ¿No? Juntas de buen gobierno, los municipios rebeldes autónomos zapatistas, and the local government that constitute about 35-40 municipalities of the Chiapas state. This influence goes beyond those municipalities. I think that the Zapatistas have influence more than territorial, a political influence. They exercise what Gramsci called hegemony, a political hegemony, in more places that in which they govern. But the Zapatistas are also organizing in commissions: the Health Commission, the Educational Commission, the There are the Justice Commission, the Economic Commissions. For example, they have radios, community radios. So the Zapatistas is a very well organized, democratic, horizontally government that it is the opposite to what the bourgeoisie governments are.
So people know about the Paris Commune and the Paris Commune principles. So the way the Zapatistas run, they are very similar.
Very similar. As a matter of fact, there are two woman thinkers, Marxists. One is Rosa Luxemburgo, and the other is Raya Dubajevskaya. These two women developed a government with more or less with the same democratic principles that the Zapatistas maintain now. Of course, taking into consideration the difference of time and cultural context. But these horizontal forms, revocation of the mandate, rotative form of the functionaries. Yes, we have a Marxist tradition that apply in the same way that the Zapatistas, and that is important to point it out, because the Zapatista government is not only for Indian and rural communities. That is a mistake. You can put that principles in other contexts. For example, in Mexico-City, we have a neighborhood organization based on the barrios, neighborhoods. So, especially Rosa Luxemburgo, she has a book, Autonomy, on autonomy, and she has a very good principles of how to govern a city. Also, we have the example of Rojava with the Kurdish people that is very similar to the Zapatistas. And remember that the Kurds have cities. So these principles of the Zapatistas could have a universal application. It's not only for the Zapatistas, it's not only for the Indian. They could be replied, taking into consideration context and time in other parts of the planet.
But we are, of course, from the outside world, then people are very concerned about Marcos. So how his role is now, and you also mentioned that he wrote the book War and Economy. So can you say a few words about that?
Yes, well, the subcomandante insurgente Marcos died, metaphorically speaking, and he reborn in Galeano's name. That was a teacher killed by the paramilitary in La Realidad. And now Galeano is acting very active in the conversatorios. He has his task. Now we know that Moises is the spokesman of the Zapatistas, not Marcos anymore. But Marcos is a relevant leader of the Zapatistas. And in these days, there are the publication of several books. One of them is called Political Economy and War. This is a very, very important book, Political Economy and War, because it deals with how it includes the classical article of Marcos, the fourth war has begun, the fourth war, global war has begun. La Cuarta Guerra Mundial ha comenzado. Marcos believes that there are 4 wars going on. One, the 2 that we know, the third one that is the defeated of the socialist camp, and the 4th one that is the current war, in which the humanity is in danger. They believe that the collapse of human civilization is a probable and scientific proved that that possibility is on their way. It's not in the future, it's on their way now, with the pollution, with all the climatic change, all what is happening in the world today, the extinction of many species, the problem of water. In these days, in these days in which I was here, Peña Nieto put in a decree the possibility that private corporation can take 45% of our water. That is going for the Coca-Cola, for the mining, for the beer industries. So they are exercising the government for please the industry and the corporations, the capitalist corporation, and Marcos, especially in his writers before and now Galeano, they are contribution to what we consider to be the critical thinking.
So, is there anything you would like to say to the young people watching this video?
Well, I think that young people has to read a lot, to prepare a lot, to practice a lot, to change a lot, because this generation swim the river for the top, with the current against this generation. There is not anymore the idea of the revolution as an hegemonic thinking of the left. Quite the contrary, is the idea that the revolution cannot be possible anymore. A very conservative idea. And so also, contrary to my generation, in which the problem was repression, brutal repression, lethal repression, today the capitalists use something worse than repression, that is manipulation of the mind through all this imperialistic culture, the way how you must dress, the way you have, how come you behave with your companions, the way you, even the way how you have to be as an academic. Everything, all the criteria, all the standards are American or Europeans. We don't have other criteria. The productivity criteria is in the science and in the academy to be the number one, to be to exploit your, for example, it's very common that the professor exploit the students. They work for one person that published the book, and he even do not recognize that that was written by many hands. So the robbery of information, the tricky forms in which many peoples construct their curriculum vitas is part of the war of the young intellectuals have to fight against. So it's very, very, very heavy task. So you have to remain fresh. You have to remain very open, very critical. Even critical of people like me and my companions and colleagues. To be critical is the essence of Marxism. And Marx said that in many forms. To go to the root of the problem is to be radical. So to go to the root of the problem is the core of the critical thinking. So young people have to be supporters of the critical thinking.